There's this quiet question that follows so many of us around, and it's not loud and it's not obvious, but it's lurking. It's always there. And I think that question is, am I enough? And how can we live a happy, joyful life if we are constantly thinking we aren't enough or we're not worth it? And the answer is you can't. You will always wind up feeling empty. But we all ask it, am I enough? And what's wild is how often we try to answer that question by looking outward. And this is all of us, you guys, myself included. I honestly believe this is lifelong work, not looking for your worth outside of yourself. We scan the room, we read the comments, we replay the conversations, we measure ourselves against reactions, attention, approval, or the lack of it. We let other people, sometimes people who don't even know us, decide how valuable we are. And that is where we start losing ourselves. It's also what we're talking about today on the Party On podcast. Let's face it, life isn't always the party we thought it would be. So how do we find the joy when we need it? And what if it's up to us to create it? That's where the Party On podcast comes in. Our goal, to shine the proverbial disco light on all the things that can make our lives easier, healthier, and a heck of a lot more fun. So we can enjoy the party we were all invited to, live our best lives, and dance like no one's watching. Welcome, guys. I wanted to start off today by telling you guys how lucky I feel that I get to do this. I literally feel like I get to be with you. It feels to me like in person each week, and like I get to be in your living room or in your local coffee shop with you or on your walk, and that we're actually together talking about these important life topics so that we can get past the hard stuff and live more freely and experience more joy. And life is meant to be done together, and I get to do this with all of you. And I truly feel like you guys are my family, and every email, every review, every DM means so much to me. And if you guys haven't left a review, if you are enjoying this podcast week by week, it would mean the world to me if you hopped on over and left us one. It just encourages my heart so much, and it also helps other people find our podcast. I just love going through and reading your notes. Although you don't have to leave a note, you can just leave a review. And I am super stinking proud that we have over 235, I think, 5-star reviews. So thank you guys. It blows my mind sometimes, and I'm just so grateful, and I feel like the luckiest girl in the world. So thank you. And today, as you heard earlier, we are talking about self-worth, and I'm going to start by getting a little personal. And I'll just say that the last few weeks have been very up and down for me. And you know what? The last 6 months, maybe even more, have been really, really hard. There, I said it. When I came back to Instagram, I said that I was coming back in a time that I've never felt more alive, and I've never felt more joyful. And that is absolutely true. It truly is. It's also been a season of my life that has been particularly hard. And I think for that reason is why the joy feels so strong, because of the contrast, because both can exist. And in my life, I mean, it's the whole reason for this podcast. What I have been trying to teach myself to do is embrace the joy even when the hard things are there. And so that's what I've been doing. So I truly have felt so much joy in this season, but things have been really hard. And in the last couple weeks in particular, something just happened that immediately triggered me back to like one of my deepest wounds. So it triggered me back to an event that happened to me in high school. And without going into it, we'll just say back then a friendship situation caused me to completely question my worth. And I say question my worth, but I didn't really know I was doing that at the time. And I'm not even sure I was questioning it. What it caused me to do was assume that I had none. It made me assume that I had no worth. And at a really young, impressionable age, I was probably about 16, that's really, really rough. And it was something that took me years to realize the effects that it actually had on me. Someday I want to do an episode on friendship and adult friendships and friendships from our past and what we learned that friendships should be and what they're not. And we'll get there someday. But today we're talking about worth. And something happened to me this past 2 weeks that felt very similar to what happened to me in high school. It was just scratching the surface of it, but it triggered me back to that place. And it triggered me back into questioning my worth. And if I were to be completely honest, there have been several things over the past year that have made me question my worth. And I'm telling you guys this to remind you that healing is not linear. These issues that get in the way of our joy are not linear in how they affect us. Like, we work on them and we work on them in phases, right? Like, we work on knowing the truth and understanding things like, my brain understands that I do have worth, but when these things trigger us and happen, we can start to feel in our bodies that we don't. And these things that we go through, these things that trigger us, we will circle back to them over and over again so that we can practice getting to the other side of it. And I actually heard someone say recently that whenever they think of a trigger, they actually don't like the word. They don't use the word trigger because the word itself sounds negative, like the trigger of a gun, right? Because that's what it feels like is happening to us. But she sees it as a gift. She sees it as an awakening. So instead of saying the word trigger, she says awakening, which I really do like that, because then it really kind of explains what it truly is a clue to what we need to get to the other side of. So this past couple weeks when I was triggered back to that point and questioning my worth, I had to double down and I had to focus on what I know to be true. And that is that I do have worth, right? But I also started thinking about why we get here and why this is something that is so hard for us to truly know in our bodies. Like, why does it keep triggering us over and over and over again? Why is it so hard for us as humans to really believe? And I just started sitting down and making notes and thinking about it. And I think one of the first places to start is how we get trapped into the idea of external validation. And if you think about it, from the time we're young, like even when we're babies, we are conditioned to look outward, right? Because we can't survive on our own. So we're conditioned to look up at mom and dad, not only for actual food and survival, but for emotional safety. So, we're conditioned from day one to look outward because we can't take care of ourselves. And then we get to grade school and then we start to get conditioned to look for validation outside of ourselves. So if we do good in school, we get gold stars, right? Or we get good grades. And then it moves on to compliments or likes or applause. And none of these things are inherently bad, right? I mean, they feel good. They can even be meaningful. But somewhere along the way, without us realizing it, they stop becoming other people's expressions of value and they start becoming our proof of it. And that shift right there, I think, starts to quietly break us, because at that point, when that starts to happen, it becomes a trap. Because if applause means you do have worth, or if the gold star means you do have worth, what happens when there's no applause? In our minds and our bodies, we feel like we have no worth. If there's no validation, we'll feel like we have no value. And if we have learned that recognition means we matter, if there's no recognition, we naturally feel like we don't matter, right? So I think as kids, we start performing, and we've talked about this in episodes in the past, and we start to shape ourselves into what we think will be accepted. Or we shrink parts of ourselves that feel like too much. I know I always felt like too much. And so I would just try to be exactly what my teachers or later in life friends wanted me to be. We polish and filter and edit until we're no longer living, we're presenting. And one of the scariest parts about this is you can do this for a long time, guys. If we are not self-aware, you can get everything you thought you wanted. Attention, praise, approval. And you can do this for a long time. and still feel completely empty. Because true worth does not come from those things. It does not come from anything external. Not only that, but external worth is always going to fail you because other people's perception of you is unstable, right? It can change on their mood, their wounds, their insecurities, definitely their expectations. That's been a big one that I've experienced. One day you can be admired. The next day you can be misunderstood. And the next day you're overlooked and you have no control over any of it. And if your worth is built on that, your worth is always going to feel shaky. It's like trying to build a house on water. No matter how beautiful it looks on the surface, underneath it's going to be completely unstable. And I think it's unstable because deep down, we instinctually know that if someone else gives us our worth, someone else can take it away. Like we're constantly trying to measure up to a yardstick that somebody can change. Therefore, how can we ever meet it? So here's the shift. Understanding that worth is an internal decision. It's not external at all. And this may sound like a simple concept, but simple isn't the same thing as easy. Deciding that you know you are worthy and that worth comes from within and not from any person in particular, just comes from God and you. I once heard someone explain worth like oxygen. Like when you're born, you just breathe the oxygen. You don't need to be told you deserve it. You just breathe the oxygen. We breathe in our worth every day. Just by existing, we're worthy. That's it. That's it. And we just have to decide that that is true for us. And making that decision, it's a quiet decision. But the effects of it wind up being loud down the road because it's that important. And again, it sounds simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Because if we have grown up being conditioned to seek it externally and to seek the validation or proof of its existence externally, you can't just stop doing that overnight, right? And then when you try to stop doing that, it means making hard decisions. Like it's not easy to make the decision to believe that you're worthy. It's not easy to stop trying to chase the proof or the validation. And then the things that you have to do afterwards isn't easy. You have to stop negotiating who you are to be accepted. You have to stop over-explaining your boundaries. And you have to stop chasing people who aren't choosing you. And that is hard when everything in you is conditioned to chase this person, because if they don't choose you, that means you are not worthy. It's really hard to rewire that part of our brain and to get the memo to our body. But choosing that you are worthy, that worth is oxygen, that God has given it to you just because you exist, it means power, because it means you become the source instead of the seeker. So this past week when I was triggered, back to that moment in high school, and it brought up the old wounds and made me feel unworthy. Like I said, I think these are all opportunities to practice, and I don't see it ever as regression, because I think what growth looks like is being able to get from point A to point B a little bit quicker than we did the last time. So whereas the thing that happened to me in high school devastated me for years. This one scratched the surface, but because I've done so much work and I inherently know that I have worth, and I have practiced knowing that I have worth, I was able to, in much less time, get to a place where I remembered that and I understood it. So it's human to be triggered back to a place of feeling unworthy. But it's up to us, because we've made that decision. When you make that decision to know that that worth is there and that you have it and that no one else can touch it, you can get from point A to point B much quicker. And again, it's practice. It's just that quiet shift of, I don't need someone else to tell me I matter because I know I do. And I know where my worth comes from to begin with, and that's God. And quick aside, sometimes I have this crazy thought, and I just want to throw it out there. Have you ever thought about the fact that when we question our worth, or when we outsource our worth to other humans, I don't know, sometimes I feel like God is up there shaking his head saying, seriously, guys? Like, I love that quote that says the same God that created the mountains and the oceans and the stars, that same God created you. And yet here we are, and I'm not shaming any of us because this is what it is to be human, but here we are questioning our worth, questioning the masterpiece that God created. We don't question the stars, do we? Or the ocean? No. And so sometimes I like to remind myself, even though it's hard for it to really land sometimes, that what God gave me cannot be taken away from another human being, even though that it makes sense that we can be triggered into that thought. So it's about making the decision, which again, isn't easy. And then it's about putting it into practice and all the things that follow. And we will have moments where we will question because that's the human brain. But we have to come back to that place of center, which is knowing and committing to ourselves that we've made that decision, that we don't need to chase it in somebody else. Or we don't need to have that external validation. And it hurts, guys. It hurts when someone doesn't choose you. It's happened to me recently. It hurts. But it doesn't affect my worth. And that's the important thing to remember. The pain can still be there, and we can feel those feelings and feel that pain, and my worth is not affected. So a few things on what knowing your worth looks like in real life, practically. I just started thinking about this, like the concept is one thing. What does it look like in application, right? And I jotted down a few notes. So knowing your worth internally, to me, doesn't mean you stop caring about people, right? It just means you stop depending on them to define you or to feel like you matter. It looks like walking away from situations where you're tolerated instead of valued. It means speaking up whenever your voice shakes, or maybe when you feel like you can't take up that space. You can, because you're worthy, and you're just as worthy as everybody else around you. It can look like not shrinking just to make others comfortable. It can look like letting people misunderstand you without rushing to fix it. And it can look like having a hard line on social media. Whoa, Nellie, do you have to be strong for this one? Say it with me. Strangers on the internet do not have the privilege of determining your worth, or they do not have the privilege of making you feel like you have less worth than you thought you did. The amount of worth that you have is non-negotiable. Just say that with me. It's non-negotiable. Make that commitment to yourself out of love. And I think most importantly, and this has been my biggest lesson, it looks like not abandoning yourself to be accepted. You stop, once you know your worth, you stop ignoring your integrity. And honestly, you pay attention to what is shown to you from people. And when someone is not choosing you, you start to see it not as an opportunity to try harder like you did before, but an opportunity to move away. And one other note I made of something I wanted to say here on this topic was, and this took me a long time to learn, so I'm just going to blurt it out to the world today, thinking and hoping maybe it'll help someone else. Not only do other people not decide your worth, but they respond to the standard you set for it. I'm going to say that again. Not only do people not decide your worth, they respond to the standard you set for it. I love this analogy that my counselor shared with me years ago. And I love this because it takes you outside of yourself. Sometimes the work we have to do is so layered. It helps to use another example of something that isn't us, and sometimes an inanimate object. So she told me to think of a diamond ring. And she was like, I want you to think of a diamond ring, say in Cartier or Tiffany's. And you walk in and you see this ring and it has a price tag on it. And it's worth that amount of dollars, right? I said, yes, of course, And then she said, so you buy the ring and you take the ring and you wear the ring. It's still worth the same amount of dollars on your finger, right? Yes. I said, of course. She said, what if someone else buys the ring? Is it worth the same amount on their finger? And I said, yes, of course. She said, what if you lose the ring and it gets lost in a muddy puddle and driven over and dirty and tarnished, and then someone finds the ring and washes it off, still as beautiful as ever, even though it's been through a lot? Is that ring still worth the same amount? Yeah. Yes, it is. So if you've been questioning yourself, or if you've been in a place where you're not truly believing your own worth, if you've been measuring your value based on how others treat you, or maybe something has happened to you that has left you scarred, thinking you have no value, I want to offer you something simple but powerful. You don't find your worth. There's nothing to quote unquote find. It's already there. You just have to choose it. You just have to decide it over and over and over again, in small moments, in quiet decisions, in the way you speak to yourself when no one else is around. And the moment you stop asking the world to confirm your value is the moment you will finally start living like you already have it. I promise you. Have I mentioned how grateful I am for you guys? Thank you so much for coming back another week. I hope you found something valuable in this episode. I know struggling with self-worth is something we all struggle with from time to time. Some of us more than others, and that's okay. I hope you feel zero shame for that. This is a part of being human. I'm just so glad you were here, and I hope something in today's episode spoke to you. As always, this podcast is brought to you by the Festive Farm Co. Go check out our shop full of meaningful gifts that you can send family and friends and loved ones to encourage their souls. I am so proud of what we have created at thefestivefarmco.com. It is a place that spreads love, joy, and encourages the world. And I could not feel luckier just to be a part of it. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great week. Party on.